Hello and welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery Podcast. I'm Jackie Tomes, and on this show we are having open and honest conversations about investing in property in a way that ultimately creates freedom. And so the topic for discussion this week with myself and Dom is toxic silence sabotaging your success? When we're building a business that we want to create freedom from, ultimately we have to collaborate with other people. And how we approach conflict with the people that we work with is a really important part of this. So we're going to be talking about how vulnerability is the foundation of trust and what it takes to create consistency and to keep things fresh. Really enjoyed this conversation between myself and Dom. So without further ado, let's do it. Hey Dom.
Hello Jackie, and hello to the audience as well.
Oh, lovely to see you. And I'm looking forward to this topic of conversation today. So tell us, what are we talking about today, Dom?
Well, it's one of those ones, it's an absolute classic, a classic in the world of business, and it's the Five Dysfunctions of Team by Patrick Lencioni. And it's one of those ones I read many years, probably like 20 plus years ago. And it's one of those ones that is good to revisit, a bit like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. These absolute classics that everyone should know about in order to have some good basis around what makes a good team dynamic in a company. And it's so important to get right from the outset, and may as well know the good fundamental bits, because if you don't, then you're going to fall over and find out the hard way. So find out the easy way and read the book and find out about it.
I'm so excited. It feels really, I think it's really a wonderful topic for me at the moment, because like most of my time is going into like team and how that all works. And I think we've actually done a very good job of getting a lot of these things that Lencioni has spoken about in place, and then also mentoring others where their teams are ineffective. This is a great framework. So let's do it and just see what examples come out.
Yeah. And just before I dive in, it makes me think, a lot of people struggle with the growth of a business because they go from a task-based doing things, and they've been told to do it perhaps, to running their own business where they're doing everything, but they're also having to manage themselves and other people perhaps, and also leading the direction of the business. So it's three very different skill sets of doing task-based things to going to management and making sure everything's happening the way it should and improving systems and processes, to leadership where it's actually setting the vision, winning the hearts and minds of the team to really get people behind you and want to grow the business together. And I think that's also another reason why people struggle is because they haven't got their head around, it's a different skill set at each level. And
it's that age-old thing of just like, what got you to this point, what got you here won't get you there. And that's one of the hardest things I think about business, is that what gets you going and gets you started. Like, you're very effective at doing loads of tasks for yourself, for example. If you stay in that mindset, you can never get to the point of managing people, because actually you'll be too micromanaging. Things won't be done how you want them to be done, and it's almost like a frenetic pace, and it's almost like shifting the pace into a new gear where you're then overseeing people, and then to go from the managing to then, it's really, as a leadership, it's like you're in charge of creating the culture that everyone is operating within. So there's like a vibe across how people manage and do things within that. And that, again, is just like, it requires so much more like perspective, a different kind of energy towards doing that. And so it is really hard switching between those different phases, and you have to basically reinvent yourself as a person to be able to move through, which is where you come in, Dom, right? Because I think people who've been very successful at getting their businesses to a certain point have been very effective at doing tasks very, very well themselves, and therefore sorry, go on.
I was going to say maybe generating the business themselves, and they are the business because they do most of the stuff. But actually, it's a real shift to go from facing your audience, facing your clients and doing the work, to actually turning around and facing the team and getting them to do the work. It's a whole different persona. It's a whole different personality as to who we are to be able to operate in that way. So
we have to look to ourselves for that problem, right? And I think there's this moment of frustration where you've been really good at doing tasks, you start to try and hand over to someone else, and you're kind of frustrated that they're not doing it how you would do it or how well you would do it. And then there's like a lot of anger, I think, can come out of entrepreneurial people at that point. And then that's when you have to go, hang on a second, the problem is not these people. Probably. Sometimes it is. Probably it isn't the people though. It's probably you. And then you have to realize how you are the problem and change yourself, which is why you're so important in the mix with me and Dave, because I think we're almost very much focused on the practical side of business, but you always look to the person and help them to grow and evolve because
Mm.
really they are the biggest limiting factor.
Always, yeah, it doesn't matter who we are, whether we're Elon Musk or others, we're always the biggest limitation in our company, effectively. Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you, Jackie. And likewise, I couldn't do what I do without you and Dave, and that's why teams are so important because
Mm.
we only really understand how to leverage in order to create value, which is what a business does, is create value for others. When we have different skill sets around us, but those
Well
skill
said,
sets
Dom. Nice
only
segue.
come. Ah, yes. Those skill sets only come to fruition when we've got the first level in. So imagine if you imagine in your mind's eye a pyramid, and there's five levels to the pyramid, and the first dysfunction of a team is a lack or an absence of trust. And this is caused by the fear of being vulnerable. When we start in a new job, we don't want to look like an idiot. Um, we're not open so much to communication. We're quite guarded about what we say for fear of looking silly, perhaps. But this, of course, creates a lack of cohesion, a lack of trust, effectively. Um, so, yeah, it'd be interesting. Have you got any examples of that you can think of in your companies in the last few years?
I mean, I can. It's so interesting because I think the fact that you've hit on the vulnerability point as part of that, for me, there's definitely was a massive shift for me personally when I started to be more vulnerable with everyone, really. Like, I think to a certain point when I kind of thought that me having all of my shit together was basically my
Yes,
job. And then when you
yes.
realize that basically you're never going to get all your shit together, like, yeah, that's just being a human. Like, we are always going to struggle with that. And then when you start
Yes,
to accept that, and then you start to realize that actually that's the same for everyone. And that actually, if we could all just stop trying to pretend that we have all our shit together, or is ever going to be a point that that comes, and then you
yes,
start to share how you're struggling along the way.
yeah.
It's amazing how people react to you differently, and I can think of examples in my mind both from a like an
Mm,
internal team member perspective and also from mentoring people, that the more I just
mm,
started to share the struggles that I personally was having in this moment and those challenges, the more people started to be, yeah, to open up and be honest with me and to trust me, because it's like there's nothing that I'm hiding. And also, I guess before when I thought I had to feel like I had all my shit together, that wasn't a conscious realization. That was a subconscious thing that was going on, that I just felt that that's just who I was. And so then
yes,
when I started to then realize that actually, gosh, I do have my struggles and the same as everyone else, and I'm just going to share those more. Everyone
yeah.
else starts to realize, oh gosh, like a big exhale. And I think for me, I had
Mm,
one of my team members the other day who is a very reserved member of the team, quieter, more like in the numbers. And
yeah.
this team member came to a group team meeting, and we always have positive reflections at the start of every team meeting.
Yes,
And her positive reflection was basically like, I've been struggling a lot, and I'm really grateful to the people around me that have been able to support me. But here's the things that
mm,
I've been going through and that I've been struggling with. And she was just so open and so candid in a group situation. And I was like, this is incredible, that level of comfort and vulnerability. And we had another new team member who's only been with us for a few months. This team has been with us for several years, a new team member who's brand new to us and kind of like figuring out what it means to be part of the team still. And just
yes,
seeing her reaction as part of that meeting, it was like a relaxing and a like openness that
yeah.
you would never see from someone otherwise, when everyone's just trying to got their best face on for
Mm,
everyone. So yeah, I
yeah.
just it's such a fundamental. I can totally see it.
Yes, and you're so right. I think a lot of people are scared of being vulnerable, and I must say you really embrace it, and you're very open, and I think it really does create an awful lot of trust. And it's funny because I think about it, but I don't think I'm nearly as open as you are, for example. And yeah, so it's good to reflect for the people listening. How open are you? How vulnerable are you? Because actually, vulnerability is a sign of leadership. There's a whole load of stuff
Mhm.
around that by other authors as well, that actually vulnerability is really a sign of strength, not weakness. Um,
And
so
ultimately, you
yeah,
want your team to be honest with you. Because if they're not being
yes,
honest with you, there is going to be problems that you ultimately don't find out about because they're scared of making mistakes, of not being good enough themselves. And so, therefore, it creates this kind of it's the beginning of a toxic culture where people are scared to be honest about what's going on. They're scared to be honest with each other. And that's when bitching starts. People like, oh, I don't want to work with so and so in my team because oh, they do X, Y, and Z. And it just, the whole fragmented nature of it just
mm,
creates, yeah, this feeling that everyone wants trying to hide stuff and not be open with each other, which, yeah, I can see
yeah.
how that is just the fundamental that if you can't be open and trust each other, nothing is ever going to work.
Exactly, exactly. And just on a side note, there's a wonderful for those people who are mathematical. There's a mathematical equation for trustworthiness, and actually the most important
Oh.
aspect of the trustworthiness equation, yeah, it comes from a book called The Trusted Advisor, but it's credibility plus reliability plus, and the most important one is intimacy. So if you're
Mm.
vulnerable effectively, and you're open, you're able to be vulnerable, then you'll create a lot of intimacy. And if you're consistent with your credibility and you're reliable with what you say, then you're going to create an awful lot more trust in someone. So that's the trustworthiness equation, which is quite a useful one to know. So yeah, building trust, most important thing to get right. So encourage openness with the team. Some sort of exercises to facilitate that sometimes is a really good one to do. And of course, modeling, as you do so brilliantly, Jackie, is modeling vulnerability as well, so that you create that permission in themselves to be open to show that no one is perfect and there's no need to put on a brave face if things aren't going quite so well. So that's the first one, trust. And then the second one is fear of conflict. So we can be, trustworthy, but actually we are afraid of having difficult conversations. And I know this has been an issue for 20, 42 years of my life. Is, the
And then
fear
Jackie
of,
comes into your life and you're like, damn it, I can't run from this anymore.
yes, exactly. Well, we've known each other for a while now, so maybe it's 37
Yeah.
years. But yeah, I certainly can't run from it anymore. But I mean, I'm embracing it. It's one of the
Yes, you
mantras
are.
that
I know
I'm
you are.
saying to myself and saying to others is, embrace the discomfort, embrace the challenge of having difficult conversations with people because it opens up, yeah, the vulnerability, and it shows that you can still, have respect and love for each other even if you do have difficult conversations. Because avoidance, here's the thing, all problems are problems of relationship for one, but two, it's usually lack of communication.
Mm.
And so, if we can communicate and be open to communicate and understand that even if we do communicate, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily factually true. In fact, an awful lot of time it isn't because opinions aren't fact. Um, so just being able to have the conversation and know each other well enough to have the conversation is the most important bit. So yeah, that fear of conflict
It's
is another thing
really
that holds
good.
people back.
I think for me, it was a real turning point when I read the book No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings.
Ah,
Um, and there's actually another author as well. I'm sorry, other author, I've forgotten your name. But about the Netflix story
yes.
and how what the culture is that's being created as part of Netflix for how they have become this incredible powerhouse of just
Mm,
innovation and being at the top of their game and just like how they've done that. It's an amazing book. I should reread it again because I feel like
mm,
the main takeaway for me was the point around candor and having difficult conversations. So we had a whole episode on candor, but I guess just putting it into the
yes.
context of this story, just for me, we
Mm,
started. I read that book in 2020, I think, and then we then started to roll out this idea of candor with the team. And before that, Dave and I, we're not naturally good at having difficult conversations. Like I haven't grown up with a good blueprint around how you do that. And it's
mm.
either like you tell someone and it blows up and the relationship falls
Yes.
apart, or you say
Yes.
nothing. Like I didn't really have a in
Yes.
between those two things. And the
Mm,
idea with candor was just that like you by I made me realize that by not being honest about what's going on and the challenges and what you see as to be a problem, you're so often destroying that other person's opportunity to be able to learn something new and to grow and to get that feedback. And I think that there's such negative connotation around like conflict and feedback that we think we don't want to say anything negative because we don't want to hurt
Yes.
someone's feelings. But
Yeah.
actually, that again is like a toxic thing where you're like, gosh, if this person could do this differently, they would
Yes.
just level up and be
Mm.
way more amazing at what they're doing. And by me not
Yes.
being honest, I'm that's really unfair of them, of
Mm.
me
Mm.
towards them. And
Yes.
not only that, that's on like the kind of more positive side, but also on the more, I guess, slightly more negative side. If someone is underperforming in your team and you aren't being candid to have the conversations to tell them about it, and they don't know, you're basically having the conversations in your own mind about how they're doing a
Yeah.
crappy job. And then they keep doing a crappy job, and you're like, oh, you get further along the line, you're, God, they're doing so crap. And then it gets to the point, weeks or months later, that you're like, I've had enough, and they just get fired.
Yes. Yeah.
And for so often, this can come completely out of the blue for someone if you haven't had those difficult conversations along the way to share
Mm.
that. And so you've not given them the opportunity to be able to improve because you're assuming that the person knows what you're thinking, which is totally
Yes.
unfair. Anyway, so we rolled this culture of being candid with each other on the basis of always being in the other person's best interest. And actually, if
Mhm.
everyone in the team can be candid with each other and have those difficult conversations, that's like the first step in the Netflix story of how they basically
Yes.
were able to remove a load of rules and regulations about how the company operated because it basically becomes a self-governing organisms
Yes.
because everyone's sharing with each other where the challenges are, and then you move into a whole like process improvement kind of culture as well, like black box thinking, which is another
Yes.
conversation. But it has been transformative in terms of how people have been able to step up more to improve in their
Mm.
team, to improve in their role, and also for all of us to not be harboring stuff about each other. Like
Yes.
I really don't think we have any bitchiness at all in my team. No one complains about each other without
Yes.
having they had the conversation
Yes.
with the other person, and that is just a very nice work environment.
Yes, that's a very good point. A very good point. Because it's artificial harmony if there isn't actually a little bit
Yes.
of healthy conflict. And so it's so important to be able to foster that healthy discussion. So I guess it's kind of setting as a value, as a ground rule in the company is that no feedback is meant maliciously. It's always meant with positive intent. No matter how it comes across or is delivered, actually it's meant with love. So that's key because otherwise, without it, basically you have low engagement. People, yeah, it's artificial. Really, it's not a proper relationship because every relationship, including our partners, there's always an element of conflict, and that's good because otherwise, we're not actually growing. We're not discovering new things about ourselves, about them. So it's more real when there's conflict because you can't have conflict without harmony. And they're two opposites, right? So you can't ever have one without the other. So it's usually being suppressed if it's not out there in some level of.
And I
Um,
guess my other thought is that like I love watching documentaries about like companies or festivals a lot recently on Netflix, like how there's these amazing things that are created. But if you have like a leader at the top who doesn't like
mm,
conflict or doesn't want to hear something that's different to their opinion,
mm,
it leads to the ultimate collapse of the organization because if people aren't encouraged to feel comfortable to disagree with you and to share feedback with you, ultimately you get into this little bubble where you're like, oh God, I'm amazing. Like everything my
yeah.
ideas are all the best ideas. And they're not. Like you're always going to have blind
Yes.
spots. So there's just so many examples of companies where there's been this culture of you don't disagree with the leadership team. And
Mm,
therefore it ultimately implodes like health or people die like seriously people die like
yes.
serious like health and safety breaches occur because there's just a fear, and that is
Yes.
ultimately fear of conflict, which it's just a healthy part of a team or any relationship, like you say.
Yes. 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 And there's lots of different examples out there. Obviously, there's the Netflix one, but then there's like people like Steve Jobs, who was really headstrong, and he was like, "No,
Mm.
I tell you what it is, and it's my way or the highway." I think that would be more the old school way of doing it. I don't believe anymore that that works quite as effectively as it used to because people are far more empowered. They can choose to work for another company a lot more easily than they used to, and yeah, people want ultimately they want freedom and autonomy within a company is is that freedom. You know, freedom within a framework. So people want to be employed potentially, but they also want that autonomy to give them the sense of freedom that they can be
So
empowered in their
true.
own role, which is what Netflix does so brilliantly. So yeah.
I think it's interesting though. Like, I think there's something different between a leader having a very clear vision for what they want and how exactly they want it done,
Mm.
but still being open to being disagreed with and for there to
Mhm.
be feedback still an acceptable part of that culture versus like, this is how I'm doing it, and I don't even want to hear your opinions
Mm.
on it. And I do
Mm.
think there's as with all of these things, just that balance between those two things is really hard because I think
Mhm.
if like everyone having their own opinions and everyone's opinions being listened to and actioned and everyone
Mhm.
having freedom, it just becomes I don't know.
Politics.
I was going to say, I don't want to get political, but like democracy is a nice idea, but that leads to just quite a lot of beigeness because you're trying to please everyone and get everyone's
And
opinions. But ultimately,
yeah,
someone has to lead and make the
yes,
decisions
the final
and just
decision.
forward in a direction. Not and that, not as a dictator. I don't know a lot about these things, but dictatorships are obviously like someone is just like, I don't want to hear anything. Anyone who disagrees with me is going to be sent to
Yes,
prison or whatever. That's very different. But
yeah,
like leadership is someone making
yes,
strong decisions, still listening to make sure that they're not, you know,
yes,
they are taking it into consideration, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it. It's really hard.
yeah.
That's one of the
It
hardest
is.
things of running a big company, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or yeah, exactly right. No, 100% with you on that. So we've had trust
Hmm.
and we've had fear of conflict. The next one is lack of commitment. So basically, unclear goals. You know, we always bang on about it to our mentees. You know, measure the key performance indicators. You know, measure what it is that you're doing, and it needs to be a binary yes, no, I've done this, and not work on this. It's like, what does that mean? It's like you've got to have a clear it's done or it's not done. It needs to be yes or no, and the KPIs need to be hit or not hit. You know, it's kind of it needs to be crystal clear. So clear goals
Yes.
is absolutely essential so that you've got commitment to what it is you're
Commitment. I
working
think the
towards.
commitment is just seems so obvious to me, but I just see more and more that that is not the case in so
Mm.
many situations. And that doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes sometimes or fall off and have to recommit. I think it's more
Yes,
about recommitment than commitment, actually. Um,
yes. Mm.
but it
Daily
is
recommitment. It's
daily
easy to commit
recommitment.
once. I'm going to go to the gym today. Yes, I'm going to
Yes, I'm done.
go.
But to go every single day, and that doesn't mean, yeah. So for me, it's I'm rereading some Jim Collins books at the moment, and he
Hmm.
talks about the 100 mile, no, sorry, 10 mile march,
Yeah.
and that this idea that he talks about the first explorers that went to, excuse my bad geography, I'm not sure it was the North or South Pole, two groups of explorers that went to try and discover, let's say, the North
Mm.
Pole for the first time. And one of them set out with this concept of just like consistent daily progress. And the other one was just like a push, go hard or go home kind of attitude, and would maybe some days try and do like 100 miles and some day would do
Right.
nothing at all. And he just
Yes.
talked about the difference of these two groups. One group was successful and triumphed, and one ended up basically dying. And the one that succeeded was the one that just marched consistently, let's say 10 miles every single day, day
Yeah.
in, day out. No matter what happens, you just keep moving forwards and you don't exhaust yourself. And I think that
Yeah.
is, he then talks about lots of different business examples for how that what that means in terms of how you run a company successfully. And it isn't what you do this
Yeah.
week or this month or even this year. It's what you do every
Yes.
single year and therefore every day, time after time after
Yes.
time. And that, for me, that commitment to the habits and routines that you have, let's say for this example, as a company, when do you have your meetings? When do
Yeah.
you all come together? When do you work on your things individually? When do you choose your priorities?
Yeah.
Like having your methods for all of this and creating that culture of commitment and consistency, like that, I think actually we're that's probably one of the areas that we've excelled at most in terms of just
Yes.
like execution and
Yes.
consistency. If you can get that
Yes.
right, you can get quite a lot of other stuff wrong and still do very
Yes.
well.
There we go. And because it's like Betamax and the other VHS. They were both competing. Betamax was way better, but VHS was just more consistent and easier to use and everything else.
Mm.
It's all always about, as you say, consistency. and being really committed and recommitting every day or every week to that particular meeting and just showing up. 80% of success is showing up. So committing to showing up, whether or not you like it, whether or not you feel like it, because of course feelings get in the way the whole time, and just doing it. Same with getting fit, going to the gym, dieting, whatever it might be, you have to recommit on a regular basis and be clear and remind yourself of the goals. So then you don't have indecision. You've got decision, and decision means to cut off the other options so that you've got one decision. And then, yeah, you're far more likely to hit deadlines. You're far more likely to be successful, and also people get to know you as someone who delivers. You've got credibility because you're consistent about your commitment. So yeah, and also commitment means that you're going to be courageous in the face of the
Mm.
unknown. There's the four C's. People want confidence, but the confidence is a result of one, commitment, two, being courageous, and then as a result of being courageous and doing these things, you develop capability, which is the third one, and that leads to confidence. So if you want to get confident in something, start with commitment. So yeah, make sure you keep committing, recommitting yourself,
Then
demonstrating
you lead
that
by
leadership.
example. If
There we
you
go.
don't, and I can see the teams where I'm, supporting and mentoring the business, and there are issues in the team that are present, the person in charge is not leading from the
Mhm.
front. And if your word means nothing as a leader, everyone else can just say what the hell they want and do what the hell they want. Because clearly,
Yeah,
if you're not doing it, no, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
And it's remarkably simple in
yeah.
concept, but in terms of just always doing it in the moment is
Mm.
hard. And I think then obviously it's like sounds in like conflict to just being like vulnerable and being like going through the challenges that we're going through. And I think for me, when you start to put those two things together to say, look, sometimes we are going to struggle and that's okay, but we figure out how we keep to our commitments as part of that. So we have like our consistent rhythms for our
Yeah,
team meetings every single week that always happen. But
yeah.
sometimes someone might be off sick, or sometimes I think for me, I'm like, if I'm not feeling like I had a day on a team meeting day a few weeks ago, I was like, I am really grumpy today. This is not going to be good leadership, Jackie. This is going to be the Jackie who just gets really annoyed at everyone for like tiny little things. So I was like, you know what? We're going to move these meetings to Thursday because then I will show up a lot better. And that's, for me, commitment with honoring what's going on in that moment. But it doesn't mean you
Yes,
cancel it or you don't show up or you don't tell
yes,
people. You communicate,
yes,
you explain what's going on,
yes,
and you adjust things accordingly. But it doesn't
yeah,
mean those meetings never get cancelled. It's basically the rule.
right,
That is what the commitment means.
yeah, yeah, yes, and on that, it's reinforcing and reiterating those commitments too, because we can have I don't know, a quarterly meeting, about the goals or something like that for the company, but actually, people forget so much because there's so much going on, and so we have to remember, we have to remember
Mm.
all our commitments and keep. That's why I think a vision board is great because it reminds you of what it is you're working towards. Having the KPIs that you can see on a regular basis is where a big game changer for Niche and Jazz, actually, David mentioned, when they had their KPIs on the wall, they saw them every day. That's when they were really committed to making it happen. That's when their results really started to change because they were seeing it and reconfirming, recommitting every day to what it is that they're aiming towards. Because we forget. Don't rely on your brain. Don't rely on your
Yes,
memory. Make sure
rely on
it's written
Asana.
down. There we go. Yes, use project management software. Make it easier on your brain. And
It's
in that sense,
hard as
be
well.
efficient.
Like be efficient, yeah. But it's hard, I think, also with like what's the word? Those of us who are more like the starters of things and the creators of things often struggle with the consistency week in, week out, because
Mm,
ultimately it can get tiresome, right? Like,
yes.
oh, this
Yes.
again. And so I think how you keep committed, you have to find your way to keep it fresh. And I was having a conversation with a client yesterday about this, that I have my way of managing my time and my commitments. But I probably every 3 to 6 months I get a bit bored of it and I'll just slightly change the exact method that I'm using to like freshen it
Yeah.
up. So maybe it might
Yes.
change from being a time block commitment to myself to being a reminder in Asana again, or I
Yeah.
might put a meeting in place to do something. And you just got to just
Yeah.
keep keep the consistency of the thing that you know you need to
Yes,
do, like setting the priorities each week, doing your KPIs, like you're saying, like
yes,
showing up. But how do you keep it fresh and fun when you are
yes,
someone who
yeah.
doesn't like finishing stuff,
Yes,
like
yes.
me?
And on that, then it's sort of gamifying it, making a game of it, having a little bit of
Mm,
competition between teams, between individuals
mm,
within a company, something to make it fun and engaging. Because yeah, you know what? When we know what to expect and we know what's going to happen, it gets boring, and that's why people have midlife crises and all sorts of things like that. We get bored, so it's keeping it spicy, shaking it up a little is definitely a good thing for variety because we all need variety. We need consistency,
mm,
and we need variety. So yeah, okay. So on to dysfunction four then, and dysfunction four is the avoidance of accountability. So
mm,
not being held accountable for actually delivering on the results. And this is caused by usually weak peer relationships. So, oh, he's not doing it, or she's not doing it, I'm not going to do it
mm,
either. Or these people aren't pulling their weight, I'm not going to pull my weight either. Um, and or the leader not as you said before, not doing what they said they're going to do or not being consistent about it, and that causes mediocrity and frustration amongst the team. So it's another one that holds teams back. Any thoughts on that?
Gosh, so many thoughts. I'm trying to pick with a thought that I want to go with. I think it's really hard because obviously, like in, I think a lot of people start thinking about accountability and start to go, well, it's like, yes, it's important that everyone knows what they're accountable for. And I think that's
Yes,
where the next thought ultimately goes. And then it's like, right, okay, so we need to make sure we've got really clear job specs for everyone and it's clear all that, like, who's accountable for what. That is incredibly hard to get set up. Like there's so many steps that come before that, like what's the structure of the teams, who's fitting where, who's doing what right now. And then your business is always growing and evolving and changing when you're at the sort of size that we're talking about, the people listening here.
yes, yes,
So you'll get it right one day and then it's already
yeah,
evolved. And then you could go back and update who's accountable for what again. And it's like it's a massive undertaking. For me, what has been way more powerful is just again coming back to this like culture of taking accountability. So like I don't we've got a external supplier at the moment where if you email them about something and they don't think it's their problem, they basically throw it over to someone else. Oh, so and so in
leave it.
accounts will help with that. And then you go to accounts, they're like, oh no, it's not account. You need to talk to our technical team. And all of a sudden you're just thrown between all these different people and no one
Mm,
grabs it and says, I'm going to do this. And so it doesn't really, ultimately, yes, we want it to be really clear who's accountable for what. But ultimately, as long as someone is always grabbing accountability or even taking overstepping their bounds and taking too much accountability, it kind of is like it's okay in the interim whilst you're really clarifying all of the different
yes.
scope of accountability and roles. And I think that just yeah, for me, I'm trying to figure out how we started to create that culture of accountability for people.
I know, I remember,
Yes,
which
please
is
tell
to
me, Dom.
say, Asana, you never say that it's
Mm,
multiple people's responsibility. There's only ever one person who's ultimately responsible for it, which helps
mm,
because then there's no confusion, right? It's like it's
that's
you or it's
very
not you.
true.
Um,
Mm,
and that helps enormously. And I was just thinking another example is, every week I show up to a call, one with Rose and then two with Johanna. One is sales, one is DMA and clients and things like that. And so, but if they weren't there on the call, would I do it at that time? No, I probably wouldn't. Whereas if I've just got that one other person to show up for, everything shifts because you've got that other person who's there. So that peer-to-peer accountability and also feedback where they can say, how can they help me? How can I help them? What can we do? What have we missed? All these things to hold each other accountable, even in pairs, is better than not at all, certainly.
mm.
So yeah, yeah, but
You're right, and Asana is a very useful tool for those conversations because you're all every single task gets logged in Asana as a task,
yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore if it's not in there, it's probably not going to happen. And if you put it in there and it hasn't got someone's name next to it, then it's clear what there's a gap that someone hasn't got that hasn't been clearly assigned. You're right. It's a very
yes,
simple method
yeah.
overall, and that just
It,
touch point once a week to discuss it, and then you see where the gaps
yeah.
are, and then decide who's going to do what. It's very simple.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it's just basically it's about clarity of expectations. And if you've got that, then it's binary, it's black and white. They've either done it or they haven't done it, and someone can be held accountable for it. And that makes deliverables much, much clearer and easier to track. And the other thing on accountability is to remember to celebrate it, because we obviously do. the trudge work in business all day long, and actually just celebrating things that, and that's why we would start our meetings as you set it up to celebrate the wins, to talk about the successes, and yeah, and acknowledge them, because otherwise it's easy to go through business life without really acknowledging your successes, and that's something that we have to drill into our mentees a lot, isn't it? We always start with successes. We always start with, what they have achieved, because it's so easy to overlook it.
Yes. No buts. I did this, but no, no buts. Save the buts for later. And I was also going to say, I think also this is part of the team understanding the bigger vision that we're all collectively working towards and how we all fit into that. And
Yes.
then when you see what we're all driving and working towards, if there's an area where someone hasn't got accountability, ultimately we want to be able to someone wants to be able to grab it because they know that this is part of us achieving what we ultimately want to achieve. So
There we go.
therefore,
Yes.
and there's just so many strands to all of this. They're basically sharing like years and years of work ultimately that lie ahead to doing all of this. You just got to find your way to enjoy it. But if you've got the right people with the right values who
Mm,
understand the vision that you're heading towards, then your accountabilities can be a little ropey and a little unclear, but ultimately someone grabs it and does it because you've got the right
yes.
people around you.
Exactly. Exactly. Which leads us on nicely to the last dysfunction, which is inattention to results, which is, of course, what all the others build up to. If you haven't got trust, if you haven't got healthy conflict, if you've got fear of vulnerability, those things, then you can't get the results. And ultimately, that's what a business exists for, is to get the results and create the value for the customers. And usually, the cause of the inattention to results is because people are focused on themselves. They're focused on their own ego. Maybe they're focused on their own drama of, oh, this person didn't do this and this person didn't do that, and I want to do this and I don't want to do what other people say, or whatever it might be. And it's just, yeah, a focus on themselves rather than the team, which is a really important one. So yeah, basically the team underperforms because it's too selfish. The individuals are too selfish, and yeah, it is. They don't have shared goals. They have opposing goals potentially, and that's why it's really important to go, okay, what are the results that we are collectively working towards? And this is where the leadership really comes in, is that it's about winning those hearts and minds, that everyone feels like they're part of the same team, working towards the same results. Yeah, yeah, it's good to
Yeah.
go through
So
this.
the title of the section was what again, Dom?
Inattention to results.
Inattention to results. Yeah, so you basically get lost in the day to day because you're
Mm.
not clear why exactly you're doing it.
Exactly, and yeah, and too focused on oneself as well. There are, one's own drama or one's own ego, and not thinking collectively about other people at the same time. So yeah,
It's
so
really I think that's like part of the just I think that how we make decisions ultimately as a team is part of all those little day-to-day decisions that you make ultimately lead towards one end result or not. And I think we can just get so lost in all of that if we're not exactly clear what we're heading towards. And if everyone's clear on that, then you actually can sometimes take quite radical decisions because you're like, actually, like for me, I think probably one of them is like just not firing clients, not
yeah,
working with people who aren't really ultimately aligned with you and the vision, because there's lots of different types of people and everyone's got to find their people who are right. But I think for me, that ability to say, actually, with this client really isn't aligned with the culture that we're trying to create and what we're trying to do, and it's causing it causes problems. And I think not many companies would genuinely let go of clients who aren't right, because you're basically
mm,
saying no to money, which is
yes,
very hard to do when
mm,
assumedly the biggest goal of business is to make money. But no,
yeah,
actually, there's way bigger visions behind everything than just money. And if you are end up making decisions maybe from a monetary perspective, you
yeah,
take yourself down a different path that ultimately doesn't fit within the wider whole.
yes, quite exactly right. So those are the five dysfunctions of a team. And in short, so if we start at the bottom, trust that allows people to feel that they can have conflict, and conflict enables more commitment, and yeah, cohesion. That drives the accountability, and the accountability, of course, supports the results. So those are the five dysfunctions of a team, and of course you reverse them, and it makes them a high-performing team, a cohesive team where there is trust, there is conflict, there is commitment, accountability, and therefore there's results. So it's a nice, simple model, but it's a really good one to kind of reflect on and think about. Okay, which bits aren't working so well for me in my team, and your team, by the way, it doesn't have to be employees or virtual assistants. It could be your accountant, it could be your bookkeeper, it could be your builder, it could be, your investor. Do you have that trust? Are you able to have the difficult conversations? Are you all committed towards the same thing? Are they clear on what those goals and results are for this particular property deal you might be working on? All of that counts. So for all the listeners, please do listen and think about it for yourselves
And all
on
the
that.
different scenarios. That's interesting, actually, because you're right. I was purely thinking of it really from a internal team perspective, but yeah, the investors is such an important one. Like,
Mm,
we recently had a deal that was going through, and at the last moment there was a problem with it, and
mm,
we had to completely switch how we were structuring that deal, which meant how the investor was meant to be involved in the deal wasn't going to be possible anymore, and it meant that they were going to have to totally trust me and Dave to proceed in this new way, which was not how we'd initially set things up. If we hadn't got that trust with that investor, the whole thing would have fallen apart at that moment because we couldn't have proceeded in that way. But that trust that we've built up, again, because of all of these things that we've said there, it's like, yeah, get on with it, guys. Like, I trust you. That's fine. I know it's going to be fine with this new way of working, even though it wasn't really what we planned. And that is, yeah, like it could have been not a catastrophe. It's not that dramatic, but it could have, a whole load of work could have completely fallen apart. But actually, with relative ease, we've just saved the whole thing and got it back on track, which would never have been possible without all of that.
yeah. Nice. So what would you say is your one biggest takeaway from this conversation? What would you say is the one thing that either you'll focus on or that you think the audience should focus on?
I guess my one takeaway to leave everyone with, because as I'm talking through all of this, I'm like, there's a lot of work to be done here. Like,
Always.
it's one thing if you can do it yourself, it's another thing to be able to get others to do that, and how all the people that you work with function. And so I
Yeah.
think my biggest piece of, I suppose, advice off the back of this is to enjoy the process of setting all of this up, because this is many years of work and trial and error and learning. And if you're impatient to get it all set up, which I definitely was when I first started hearing about these kind of
Mm,
things, it takes the joy out of it. But actually, if you can just be like, right, which of these things am I just going to start with that feels like it's going to
mm,
make the biggest impact in the shortest possible time? And I guess probably starting at the bottom of the triangle of the pyramid would be the place to start. And then just enjoy the process of doing it, of rolling it out, of getting the people that you work with on board with it, and just knowing that it does take time, and like it takes time and recommitting to all of these different parts of it, and knowing that that's part of it. Like, the joy is
yeah.
in making this all happen, not in getting to the end result of it all being
Yes.
perfect. And if you can do
Exactly.
that, you'll just do all of this. It will just happen, and it will happen with
Yes.
ease.
That is beautiful, Jackie. I absolutely love that. Makes me think of what Dave taught me many years ago, which is to say, if you're coming at a problem from a position of fear or anxiety or worry, you're not going to solve it, because that's not the way to solve it. We have to come at it from a place of how do I enjoy, even though it's a challenge, how do I enjoy the process of fixing this? Because then it's from a lighter position of I can do this, rather than I just need to get rid of this. Um, my final takeaway or suggestion to the audience is one that I think or certainly I'm speaking for myself here, model the behavior that you want to see in others. I think that's the most important, because if life is a reflection of who we are, which I believe it is, then actually if you model the behavior that you want to see in others, then you'll facilitate that in others. So that's my takeaway, and that's my
Oh, that's
suggestion for
really
the
good.
audience.
Which, one bounce off of that one as the final thought would be, if there's behaviors that you want to model yourself but you can't, that
Mm,
there is golden magic to be dug up there. And this for me is
mhm,
where, people like yourself, Dom, or Rebecca, or
mm,
Stacey, or Simon, all these wonderful guests that we've had on this podcast, the people who help you to develop yourself to look into what the subconscious blockages are, or the energetic
Mm,
blockages, or the chemical blockages that are present
mm,
within you that prevent you from doing what you want to do. And I think if you can
mm.
get, because I think personal development can just be such a wide, it's just wide in
Huge.
scope. You're trying to, we're trying to heal, generations of trauma and ancestral whatever. Like, it's just like, it's a life's work. But if you can always say, what's the actions that I know I want to model, and the habits that I know I want to have, that I know will lead me to this result, but I cannot commit to it and I cannot do it. That's actually brilliant, because there is some kind of emotional blockage, energetic blockage, some sort of fear, something from a personal development perspective is what is required to be looked at, not just whipping yourself harder, because that's not going to be a sustainable approach. What do you need to
Yes.
look into within yourself and to let go of? And reaching out to people, the people that I've mentioned, like you, you, Rebecca, Stacey,
Mm.
Simon, these are all the guys that have helped me and Dave to let go of our version of that stuff and to be able to keep committing to what we want to do. And that's really where the crux of it comes down to, in my opinion. Fantastic. I hope you really enjoyed this week's episode. We will pop a link to the Five Dysfunctions of a Team book by Patrick Lencioni in the comments if you didn't get enough on this topic today. This time next week, I'll be back with you with Anastasia from AUC Property. And Anna is a powerhouse investor who I've been working closely with for about the last 18 months. She's raised £1 million of joint venture finance in the last 18 months. And we're going to talk about what it really takes to be able to do that. A really wonderful, open and transparent conversation that you're going to love. So until next week, have a fantastic week ahead.